Attention, please. Why don't we go ahead and get started? First off, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time to be here. This is one of the most important things that we can do, as citizens of San Angelo, for our city, and that is anytime that we open the charter, it is a big thing. The charter is truly our constitution. It's the way that we manage and run our city. So any changes to this charter is something that the voters must ratify. So one of the things that, just a little background, and you can look at the presentation. It was drafted in 1915, so this document has been around for a long time. We are a home rule city. The key behind that is what can amend it. So I want to go back to that. The way the process is going to work is that we, the Charter Review Committee, are going to make some recommendations. But before we make those recommendations to the City Council, I want to listen to you. Did we pick the right recommendations to take before the City Council? Our recommendations that we've got stated on our slides today, do they have the right arguments? We want to listen to you. And if there's any changes that you're proposing, we want to listen to you as well. So this is your meeting. At the end of all of the different sessions that we're going to have, and there'll be 2 others like this, and then we're meeting with different forums, we will then take everyone's input, we will put it into a final document, and we will take it to the mayor and the city council for approval to take to you in the November election. So the key behind this, the key takeaway is that only you can make the changes. Nobody else can. This is a voter's change because it is our charter and because it is our constitution. So first off, I'd like to introduce the committee members. One of the things that you'll see up here is that every city council individual elected a person to be on this committee. So from that standpoint, it's very important that you understand that each one of your districts is very well represented. Jim Turner was going to be here. He'll probably show up a few minutes late, but Jim Turner was appointed by our mayor, Dwayne Morrison. Rodney Fleming appointed me to this committee, and I was fortunate enough to be voted as the chairperson by the fellow members. Harry Thomas from District 2, Marty Self appointed Harry. Floyd Kreider was Johnny Silvas' appointment. Joe Munoz was Dan Vardaman's member. And then John Mark was Elizabeth Grindstaff's member. And of course, Candy Poole, Charlotte Farmer appointed her. So I believe that this is probably one of the best groups I've ever worked with. And I again, just want to reiterate the fact that y'all were very well represented, on this review committee. The town hall meetings that we're proposing tonight, we're here at the Convention Center. But for those that couldn't be here tonight, if you could attend at Lincoln Middle School on June 1st, it's going to be at 5:30 p.m. Or on June 16th at the Southland Baptist Church. So we are having 3 of these town hall sessions, and we're holding them across the city, so those individuals that couldn't be here tonight or were a little closer to their respective districts or areas, they may also attend. We're also speaking to the different media, professional, civic, and social clubs. So if you have an organization that you'd like for us to come and speak to, please contact Anthony Wilson, and Anthony will then come back in and schedule us to be there to those events. As far as timelines for this committee, we'll be having all of the different town hall sessions and different meetings, but on July 21st is kind of our drop dead date. That is the date that we deliver our final proposal to the City Council for their ratification to be put on the November ballot. And then on November 3rd, you will be able to vote on those items that we're presenting to you tonight. Or if there's some changes, we'll also incorporate those as well. So I'd like to get started right into it. The first one is going to be term of office. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to Harry Thomas, and he'll go over the details of this proposal to you.
Thanks, Trinidad. I'm going to learn to adjust the microphone because Trinidad's a little taller than I am. The Charter Review Committee looked at the term of office, and one of the things we found was State Bill 108, whatever the number was, from 2011, indicated that cities, municipalities could change the way the elections are held and be held every 2 years. So we looked at how that might accomplish that, and one of the ways that we looked at was to have 4-year terms for the city council and the mayors. Mayor in districts 2, 4, and 6 in odd number years, and district 1, 3, 5, and even number years. That's how we are currently. So we're proposing to go to a 4-year term with election every other year. The mayor in districts 2, 4, and 6 beginning in 2017, and that would be concurrent. They just were elected for a 2-year term and ratified this morning, as a matter of fact, canvassed the votes this morning at the city council meeting. And districts 1, 3, and 5 beginning in 2019. The members that would be elected in 2016 to districts 1, 3, and 5 would serve at a 3-year term so that we could get back on schedule to these 4-year terms. Oh, so why are we looking at this? Well, first, one of the things we're doing is reducing the frequency of elections, and this is certainly allowed by state law. This would also reduce the cost of conducting elections to the city, and as we saw in the paper, the last election cost about $27,000 plus, the one that was held on May 9th. The bottom line is a couple of those council people ran unopposed, so if you've got more than one person running for a particular district, it's going to increase your cost. A longer term also allows council members time to develop a fuller understanding of the city operations and their roles before seeking another term. And Lucy can tell you this morning as she was seated, certainly that information, even though she's kept up with the council over the last several months and looked at council agendas, there's a lot of information that's passed back and forth. And so she knows it's going to take her a period of time to get up to speed. And we want to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date individuals sitting in this council seat doing the business for the city. We also looked, presently we have no term limits. We also looked at the possibility of putting term limits on council people, limiting the council person to 2 4-year terms or a total of 8 years. But we also said maybe we really don't want to lock somebody out if they've had an opportunity to gain some knowledge. So if they've been away from the council seat for at least one term, they're able to come back and propose that they could come back for election at. So why are we doing this? Limiting the service to 2 full 4-year terms ensures an adequate continuity of governance and of institutional knowledge while infusing the council with fresh perspective and ideas. I know for a fact that it's tough to run against an incumbent. Trinidad has done that. And traditionally, what we'd like to do is to get another group that has the opportunity to serve so that they can bring ideas. I'm not locking out Charlotte by any means. She's been there, done a great job over the last 12 years. But the bottom line is we really need to look at whether or not we can take this city to the next level. And maybe there's some other people out there that would like to serve that just don't have the opportunity to do that. We're going to wait and take questions after.
Let's do it now.
Oh, you want to take it? Okay.
Yeah, so let's, rather than try to go back and rehash, I'd like to hear from y'all. What do y'all think of the 4-year, first off term, four-year term of office, and then being able to have the term limits? Is there any input from you? And if so, please step up and give us your input. Yes, sir.
My name's Ken Casper. It seems to me you have enough trouble getting people to run for a 2-year term, and to expect them to give up 4 years of their lives to be on the city council, I think, is asking a lot.
Point taken. And one of the things that we also discussed along with that, and we're going to capture all of your thoughts, was that, if an individual truly wants to run for this office and they commit to 4 years, you've got an individual that is going to be there for the long run. So both perspectives, but that is something that is absolutely in the back of our mind. Could we get candidates to run for a 4-year? Because it truly is a long-term commitment. Point taken, sir. Yes, sir.
C.R. Barbian, and I'm definitely in favor of term limits. If we do not go to the 4-year term, then and stay at the 2-year term, I believe a maximum of 3 would be sufficient.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Pat Malloy. I too am a little bit interested in the likelihood of getting candidates for 4-year terms. And I was just curious to know whether you've ever surveyed existing and past members of the council and the mayor's office to get their impression and how that might have affected their decisions.
I've talked to several of the council, and I did talk to the mayor today as well. I had a cup of coffee with the mayor today to go over these units, and so the feeling, it's mixed. What we've asked is, do we believe we can get the candidates, and do we believe that we can get the right candidates for the position, and would it have impacted their decision to run at the time, knowing that it was going to be a 4-year term? Because not until you're in office do you truly understand all of the time that it takes to be in office. So those are things that we're listening to you and trying to identify, and we'll definitely take a look at that question and potentially get some responses, back from the council members to see what their responses are.
Yeah, I'd go back maybe 10 years or so to get all the council people that have served and just get their impression.
Okay, sir.
It may be interesting. As far as term limits are concerned, I'm not in favor of term limits. In a sense, we have that already. It's called voting. Term limits is just another excuse for lazy people that won't go to the polls. What are we voting here? 17% of the population. We have the ability to move those positions around. It's called just going to the polls. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me comment real quickly on something that Pat said. We talked about surveying the council and the mayor on the 4-year situation. We have the opportunity for citizen input through surveys that are out there on the charter review, and this group has been monitoring those. Right, so far as of this afternoon, I think we had 44 responses, and to your point, Pat, those responses are mixed. Right now, there are a majority of those responses have said, hey, we'd be willing to try it, but no one's 100% in favor of this, so we still think that it's an opportunity for us to take it to the voters, but we certainly want that input, and so we're listening to what you say.
Yes, sir.
My name is R.A. Cantrell, and I'd like to know where these two ideas came from. Did you have a lot of citizens come to you and say that they'd like to see term limits and 4-year terms? Or was this an inside politics kind of thing?
Well, what we did is we went through the charter from end to end, and when we came to this particular section, we asked, is the current process fully effective, and what is the cost to the city? And so from an internal perspective, we, the charter committee, dissected it. We came back and we wanted to know all of the ins and outs. And then we went out to the street and we went to the different entities. We went to, the places we eat breakfast. We talked to several individuals at the churches and we asked them. So from that perspective, we did have both internal and external input, and they felt that this was one that they wanted to at least discuss. And that's why we're bringing it to you to get your input into it. But no, this is not an internal, we did it behind closed doors, and that's why we're here now. Because if it had been an internal and you, the public, had said no, then it comes off the board. So that's why we're having town hall sessions, to eliminate the potential of something happening behind closed doors.
But it did originate within the committee, not
Yes,
not
yes,
in the
all
population.
all of these came behind the committee, but it was an open forum. We always had the media there with us. We always had different individuals there. So this was not a, close the door and let's do it in private. This was a public forum in which we had media and we had guests there to talk to us and to monitor everything that we were doing. And monitor is not the appropriate word, just to listen in and provide their input.
Thank you.
Trini, can I add?
Just a minute. One other point. One other point that I'd like to make is part of that information actually came from state law that was passed in 2011 that says that you can move to 4-year terms and go to elections every other year for municipalities to save money. So part of that impetus came from citizens, but part of it also came from a state law that was passed in 2011.
I was going to add that, just to make it clear, these topics are not topics that the committee is endorsing, is recommending, is proposing. These are the topics that we all agreed upon that were important enough to bring to the public. Because even within the committee, I think there's disagreement as to some of these, as to whether or not there ought to be term limits, or when we get to the police chief later on. Again, I just want to emphasize, these aren't topics that we're all here together endorsing and recommending to the public. We just want to hear input from the public at this point.
Yes, and I was the co-member of the subcommittee, and the question was asked, was it just us and so forth? We also have a former council person on the committee at the other end of the table there, and we spoke to the people. I spoke to the person that appointed me, and I'm sure some of the others did as well, and got their input. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was that the council people that I talked to say it takes a little over a year, maybe a year and a half, to get a good grasp of what the heck you're doing. The learning curve is kind of steep, a little, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, but it's not really easy either. And so sometimes just when you just get, your feet on the ground and you know what you're doing, now you got a campaign for re-election. So if you had a 4-year term, by the time you got a year and a half, then you got a good 2.5 years where you can actually be most effective, was the thought that came to my mind.
Yes, sir.
Also, I like saving money, so cutting in my number of elections you have in half is a good thing.
Okay, my name's Terry Campbell, and I like the 4-year term, but the logistics of how you're planning on implementing it, I have a problem with. Wouldn't it be cheaper to have all of the elections on even-numbered years and have the odd-numbered years for Ivana and her crew? Well, basically don't have any elections on odd-numbered years. Not only that, the chief of police is also on even-numbered years. So what I'm saying is, if you could take and have, in 2016, have districts 1, 3, and 5, and the chief of police elected for a 4-year term, and then 4-year terms from then on. Okay, and then you take on 2017, have District 2, 4, and 6, and the mayor elected for a 3-year term, and then after that, then in 2020, from then on, for 4-year terms. So instead of doing it on the odd-numbered years, have everything on the even-numbered years, it just logistically seems to be a little more simple to me, just looking at it logically.
Yes, and we don't disagree with that. The state bill that was passed in 2011 said municipalities may elect to do this, but they recommending going to odd-numbered years with that, so you stay away from those years when the state and the national governors government was going through their times. Now, we're talking about a May election. We're not talking about November election.
I know it's a May election, but it's just simpler, it would seem like to me, if, even for the voters, say, okay, on even-numbered years, that's our election years. And on odd-numbered years...
Well, the only reason we set it up the way we did was we were following what the state guidelines said.
Yeah, I understand that.
And so we were going to put the 3-year, 1, 3, and 5 on a 3-year term starting in 16 to get them back on that term, and then
Yeah, I know I read your write-up on it, so it's what it is.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Denise Barber. Have you concurred with other benchmark municipalities of our size, like Abilene, Midland, Odessa, to see what are they doing, what's worked, what hasn't? Because I think Pat made some very valid points. It's one thing to go to businesses and we're talking to people on the street, but have you seen this in action with other benchmark communities? I think that's something that needs to be looked at.
Point taken. What we'll do is, I don't believe we did, but we will. So by the next town hall session, we'll be able to answer affirmative to that. But at this point, I do not believe we have gone to the best practices of other cities and see what they have done. But we will do that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, Joe Spano. So, without being redundant, the term limits in cities this size, I feel like the term limit should be left up to the voters. And I think that somebody spoke a while ago to maybe complacency and maybe wanting to bring some fresh eyes and some fresh ideas. But I think you're supposed to, as a citizen, the voting process in and of itself is supposed to take care of that. If you properly vet your candidate, you are voting for somebody that is supposed to always keep it fresh and supposed to always have the best ideas to grow the city. So I don't think the term limits are really going to have anything to do with that. So for one, I'm completely against that. I think the voters need to handle how long their elected official is going to be in that office. As far as going from 2 years to 4 years, I think that's a fantastic idea, and for reasons that haven't been mentioned yet. So part of the equation that I think is the most important is a lot of the work that is done on that city council. Some of those things take years to come to fruition. And so if you're given another couple of years to a city council person, they'll be able to actually see some of the things that they're trying to implement be followed through and be finished, and they can move on to something else. Right now, if you take a bond election, look how long those take once you even get them passed. It takes years to even see some of that work even start. And so I think if you gave them a little more time in office, another couple of years, they'll be a novice by the time these things start to roll around in year 2 or year 3. I think they're really starting to get very, very well. And I think year 4, they're already going to be looking ahead. And I think if you look at history, and I'll be finished. I think if you look at history, historically, when you look at council members that have 2-year terms, I think most of the time, and I'm not one to throw out a percentage that means nothing, but I think you'll see a high percentage of incumbents that want to rerun for that second term. And so I think by giving them that 4 years, you take all that out of the equation, and they're ready to go to work from day one because they know they have 4 years to do it.
Point taken, and remember, we're not advocating one way or the other. What we've done is we've captured, your thoughts, and we're looking at both sides, and ultimately you will decide. So it will be up to the voters. Let's go to the next one, and it's going to be on qualifications. And John Mark, you want to give us your thoughts on qualifications, please?
Yes, this is an issue that was up last time, and we've kind of revisited it as far as the charter election. The qualifications, the section on qualifications in the current charter is pretty vague. It doesn't have a lot of guidance. It does have a few qualifications, but it doesn't do anything specific in relation to how old someone has to be, and it also doesn't break it down into qualifications to run and qualifications to hold office, which are not necessarily the same thing. So what we did was to go back, and we did look at what some other cities have been doing with that. Also taking a look at some of the statutory issues. One of the big issues that we have in our charter is that it has a specific section that says that no council member can be interested in any contract or profits or emoluments of any business with the city. Well, if you take that to a hyper-technical reading, the manager at Walmart can't serve as a city councilman because if the city buys anything from Walmart. So what the state law actually says is there's a certain threshold at which someone would have a conflict of interest that would have to be reported. And I believe that's having to have a certain percentage, about 25% ownership in a particular business, and a certain dollar amount of that contract. So what we have done is said that we still have that requirement that that contract requirement, but it all goes under the state law, under the conflicts of interest statute, so that if a council member has an interest that qualifies, that meets that criteria, they're required to disclose it to the council, and then the process goes through according to state law, because the provision that we have now is so vague and broad that it's hard to really tell exactly what qualifies, what doesn't, and we also believe that it could potentially exclude someone from running for office who might be very well qualified to run for office, but because of a minor business relationship with his employer or someone of that nature. Because typically, under the state conflict of interest statute, you have to be an owner. You have to have an ownership interest in the company beyond a certain percentage point, which I believe is 25%. And I may be mistaken on the percentages, but you have to actually be the equity owner of the company, as opposed to just working for a company that might have business with the city. So those are the main issues. And what we did was broke those up into two separate sections that you'll see when you see the actual language, which is to be qualified. One of the issues was also that there was no minimum age qualification. You had to be a voter, but there was no minimum age qualification to actually run. And so what we went ahead and did was broke those up so that you have qualifications to actually get on the ballot to run for election, and then qualifications to remain on the city council during your term. So those were the changes. Any questions?
No, I just have just a general comment. Us being the general public, are we going to have access and actually see the markups of the city charter before it goes for a vote? Like marked up like an engineering drawing, you red line this out and you add this in?
I believe.
Are we going to have access to that?
Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I believe what it will be like, it'll be similar to what you have when you have a Texas constitutional amendment election. It'll be published before, here's what the actual language is that it's going to be. When you see the ballot, it'll be something very short, is whether you approve that or not. But yes, it will be there.
Okay, because the devil is in the details.
It's
'Cause I
always
want
in
to
the
see the
details.
details.
It's always in the details.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't understand the difference between the qualifications for seeking election and for serving. Why would you seek election if you're not qualified to serve it?
Well, what the qualifications are, for example, with the age requirement, the qualifications would specify as of the date of election, or the date of taking office, as opposed to just, for example, if someone was not 18 years of age, they could actually qualify to run for an office, but they could never serve because they don't qualify as a voter. So it's just to kind of break that out into two separate. And I don't have the actual language in front of me that we were talking about. The qualifications that we've proposed. Let's see. This is the current charter. You have the language of the.
No,
We don't have the change.
Other than age, what would be the difference between qualifying and serving?
I can go pull it and
No, that's
look
okay.
at it. I don't remember.
Just in a quick answer, when you take a look at it, let's say that, to run for office, you must be a resident of the city, and you've got to live in the district that you're representing, and you can't be a city employee or elected official. So you get elected, and then you move to New York, or you move somewhere else, or you move districts. You are no longer, meeting the same criteria that you were when you were elected. So in this case, what we're ensuring is that once you're in office, you still meet the same criteria that was established when you ran for office. So that's basically what we're doing, is we're gonna mirror it. If you're, if you told me you were gonna live in, say, the Bentwood area or District 1, then we want you to live in District 1. We want you to, and continue to live there instead of moving around. So,
Okay.
did I answer that? I mean, you've still gotta meet the same criteria. I don't want you being a city councilman out of New York.
Right, but if the qualification is for serving,
Yeah, I think I understand the question. There really isn't any difference with the qualifications, but the issue is just specifying as to when you have to meet the qualification, in other
has
words,
that
to
been a
run for
problem in the
office.
past?
It's as I said, that's just something that we looked at, tried to look at what different cities have done as far as their charters, and most tend to break it up so that's a little bit more specific, because there have been, and I'm not with the city, but I think there have been issues before of when does that qualification kick in? When does it begin? Does it begin on the date that they file for the election? Does it begin on the date on which they are elected, or does it begin on the date at which they hold office? So.
Using the example that you have of qualification for seeking election and serving, if they're not the same, you could conceivably not qualify to serve but seek.
The way they are actually pretty much the same. It just the only real significant difference.
So you could throw your hat.
The only substantive difference, if I recall, is mostly the date on which those kick in. As to when, because you could actually, for example, if you were going to be, or if you wanted to run for office or wanted to serve on the city council, of course you have to be a registered voter. You have to be eligible to register to vote. So what would happen if someone was 17 years of age when they filed to run for an office, but they turned 18 and would be eligible to vote at the time the election or the time they took office? So it was just to clarify things, little things like that that can come up. So.
But if you separate the two, it seems to me you could throw your hat in the ring for several different offices, find out which one you got, and then pick and choose which one you wanted to serve.
No, I don't think that's possible under state law anyway.
Okay.
I'll just make one comment to your question, though, adding to what John Mark said. One of the other requests that we received prior to serving was to look at the conflict for interest. And the verbiage that John Mark told you, it was really vague and crazy. And what we wanted to do is to make sure that it was just a clean sentence about conflict of interest. And in doing so, that's really after you're serving, that the conflict of interest, of whether you're an employee of Walmart or you're an owner, well, obviously. So once you're serving, that conflict of interest really comes into play on different times through maybe a 4-year term. And so the clarification, too, of the language in conflict of interest was also a change for retaining the office.
I would think that qualifying, once that I gained office, that to qualify, I could apply for a job at, say, Shannon Hospital while I'm in nursing school. But I could apply for that job, but I couldn't be hired till I passed my nursing test in Fort Worth. That would be required. I think the same holds true for realtors. They have to qualify and have so many hours of education to continue doing business that deals with the public. Teachers have to recertify and have so many hours of education to recertify to continue teaching. And I think the same idea should be mirrored in your council member who's making decisions for your city. Should we requalify and recertify with so many years of education to continue doing the job, to stay fresh and new?
Point taken.
And Charlotte, let me just ask a question of clarification. Are you talking about some sort of continuing education or training, or? Okay.
Excellent point, thank you. Compensation, Candy?
Let me pull this down. Good evening. I was the one who spent some time doing a little investigating on the compensation, which is Section 10 of our charter. Currently, and since 1947, let me say that again, since 1947, this has been the same compensation. And you might ask, compensation for what? And maybe through my explanation, you'll get the answer to that. The mayor is currently paid $50 a month. A councilman is paid $41.67 a month. Big bucks. In 1947, I'm sure it was. In 2015, it might be a little bit different. I spent a little bit of time. I visited with several of the councilmen. I visited with the mayor. I asked them, how many hours a week do you spend with the city work, driving or being at a meeting, sitting in council, other type of meetings that you have to attend. Maybe you're at a ribbon cutting or whatever might be going on. And the general consensus was between 15 and 20 hours a week, a councilman or a mayor spends time doing city work. Yes, they knew that they were going to be paid $50 or $41.67 if they even considered worrying about that when they were elected. But at the same time, they spend some of their time, their gasoline, those kind of things. And since 1947, I think gas has gone up a little bit. So in talking with them, the average was about 18.3 hours of service a week. And I wanted to explain to you how I came to, or we came as a group, to this figure of 350 for the mayor and 300 for council members. Not wanting to not have some place to put a dollar amount to, I also went to the Texas A&M Research Center, visited with them about the median price of for San Angelo of a household. And they told me that a dollar amount was $43,477. Median household income. That, if you put it to a weekly 40-hour week, is $10.52 an hour. Not too shabby, but you know, in retrospect. Anyway, I thought, well, okay, if in a month we're going to spend about 79 hours. That's in a week, in a month, about 79 hours. If we paid $15 an hour, what would it be? And then I went to 10, and then I went to $8.50, and then I went to $7.25, and I kept thinking, man, you know, this sounds like a lot of money. The rationale behind this is that the position is elected, thus it is a volunteer, and they do understand that there's no pay involved. It's not an employment issue. They are not an employee of the city of San Angelo. And reimbursement maybe could be exact expense, but that'd be really hard to come up with. But an increase since 1947 really needs to be considered. I know this was on the ballot in 2007, tied to maybe an index or tied to medium household range or something. I forget what it was, but it did not pass. What we have now is just a figure, $50 and $41.67. And so in the deliberation, we came up with, and this sounds really low, $4.41 an hour for that average of 79 hours a month that a councilman would spend. So for a mayor, it would be $4.41. That makes your $350. And for a councilman, $3.78 an hour. And that would be the $300. There would be no other benefits, no insurance or anything like that that's being considered as part of our deliberations at this time. The why is that compensation has been unchanged for 68 years. And there's been a lot of different changes. I don't believe that you probably are making the same amount that you made even 10 years ago. And so our thoughts is that the council and the mayor should have a little bit more in the way of compensation for their time and some of the expenses that they do incur on our behalf.
Please come forward.
Denise Barber. This question relates to the previous question, and it goes back to benchmark communities. I agree that it's time, and I don't understand why it's taken this long. But I think for you to sell this to the public, budget is a very sticky, painful subject. I would encourage you need to get information from benchmark communities. Okay, and also, our county commissioners, I believe, receive a salary. Is that correct?
They're an employee of the county.
I think we need to emphasize that that the work that they are putting into this, it is a job.
It is
It is a job. We need to start seeing it as a job. But that information from the other community, the communities needs to be out, because the more information, it will help the
Okay,
voter.
good. Well, let me tell you, I did talk with Abilene, and I talked with Midland. Abilene pays $0, zero, nada. Midland pays $100 a month.
Okay, I just have one real quick just comment. If this increase in salary, if it does not increase our taxes, I'm in favor of it. That's all I got to say, is just don't want it to hit the bottom line of all of the households. If you can somehow figure out how to work it into the budget without raising our taxes, go for it.
That's, we know that's impossible. So, I mean, when you take a look at a city, the way a city is operated is based on the income from the citizens. So, the percentage would be so minute. We did get with the financial department of the city, so we met with the finance. The dollar value is still very low with the numbers that can be presented. It is within the budget. So we did go through all of those iterations. But, to answer your question, we're not talking about raising, the taxes, but you got to recall that that's how a city operates, is through the income from the different entities.
That figure was just a little over $22,000 for that increase per year, which is a drop in a bucket when you look at the a multi-million-dollar operation that the city has.
Yes, sir.
Just a few items ago, you were working so hard to save us money on elections, and here we find you squandering that sum on these extravagant salaries. I'm nonplussed. But I do have a serious question. Is there another manner in which citizens can bring a referendum item toward charter revision other than through this committee and council approval?
Charlotte, you want to help me with that?
I believe it would require signatures of the last percentage of the election. There would be a certain percentage that it would take to do a referendum to get something on the vote before people. It would be a petition that would need that.
A petitioning process, but that would be an amendment or an alteration to the charter could be done in that manner?
Yes, sir. It would then, once it was presented to city council, council would vote, and then they would put it on to, or they would bring it to city council, then they'd bring it up to the individuals for election.
So it has to be approved by the city council before it can be voted on
Charlotte,
by the people?
I don't believe so. If you
Not a
have-
referendum.
I'm not an attorney, but if you have the qualification, if you meet the percentage that's in there for a referendum on any item, then it automatically goes to the voters, is my understanding.
Okay.
But that would be the same process as a recall or anything like that.
Okay.
Could you bring something to the next one of these town halls that shows how this committee arrangement was established and what the alternative might be so that we can see that?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Any other comments on this? Yes, sir.
Art Elkins. I've been around here since '63, so it's been a couple years. And this has been a low minimum wage town ever since I've been here. I was in the military, same thing with the military. I worked for the city, retired from the city, same thing. My recommendation or my input to it would be to double or triple these salaries that you guys have recommended for the city council members and the mayor.
Point taken, sir. Yeah, and I'll close.
Hold the mic up. They're not being able to pick up and hear. We've got to
Okay.
keep the mic.
Pat Malloy again. I don't have any trouble at all with these figures that you're proposing, and wouldn't even mind seeing a couple hundred added to it. But the question I had, are council members, excuse me, compensated in any other way, mileage, health insurance, or anything like that?
Charlotte, you want to help me? As other compensations, I believe you get that you might have, please? It's better to go to the expert.
No, we are not compensated for health insurance or anything of that matter. We are reimbursed for mileage by turning in an expense report that has to be signed off on and verified. It is customary that council members, as a rule, don't take people to lunch and buy lunches and stuff, because that's kind of sort of frowned upon. So I don't know of any council members that do that, unless it's the mayor for whatever reason.
Good point. So the answer is basically no, other than the fuel for the vehicles. Any other questions on this? And by the way, I did have just some fun numbers for you that Candy brought up. In 1947, the minimum wage was 75 cents. A gallon of gas cost you 15 cents. Postage stamp was 3 cents. And the average wage on 40 hours, 52 weeks, was around $1,500. And the individuals back then elected to give them this wage. And if you just did simple math, Candy did it the professional way, it's 10 times. If you did the math, it's still less than the 10 times. So I think it's something that the voters are going to have to decide, but I think it's fair and equitable. Vacancies. Dan is not here. So basically on the vacancies, when you take a look at it, today the vacancies are filled with a special election within 90 days of a seat being vacant. Our proposal is to follow the uniform state election dates, no sooner than 30 days after the council orders the election. So if the election was going to be in November and on October 20th, the city council ordered it, we wouldn't be able to have it till May because it didn't appropriate the 30 days. So this is, again, getting back into more of the state law and making it a lot easier for us here in San Angelo to be able to conduct these elections. And the why, it's basically to comply with state law. Any questions on this one? Good. City manager duration. Floyd?
Good evening. City manager duration, city manager holds his or her position at the will of the majority of city council, 4 out of 7 members. Looking at this, there are 6, as you know, council districts in the city and 1 mayor for 7 council people. The idea, and I agree with Trinidad on this a little earlier today, is that it should take a majority of the districts, or 4 out of the 6 districts, more than half of the districts, in order to bring up the notion of removing city manager, and then the mayor would endorse that, and that would make the majority 5-7 instead of the current 4-7. The other thought that I had personally was that when you have an individual that you've selected for this particular position, and city manager, our city has the city manager runs it is more, I guess, powerful or whatever than city council instead of the other way around. When you select someone and you go through the arduous process of doing that, it should be a supermajority to remove him, and more than half of the districts that are in the city should be involved in that. That gives him or her more of a sense of being able to work in the office without like looking over their shoulder all the time. If someone does something so egregious that individuals find exception to it, I think there wouldn't be a problem in getting 5 out of 7. On the other hand, if something comes up that's maybe not quite as egregious or not quite as painful to some people, then it wouldn't be a matter of a threat and wouldn't be a petty situation, if you will. That was the thought. 2/3 vote of the city would be required to remove the city manager from the post is what is being proposed.
Any questions, please?
Have we ever fired a city manager?
Not to my knowledge, but based on the research we've done, there's been, insinuations. And so when we looked at this area, what we wanted to do was do a true representation, as Floyd said, that, if, we get to that point, that we want the districts to decide. And 4 out of 6 districts would be the majority. And so we're just putting a process to help the charter. So it's, again, if you're going to vote on it, so it's going to be up to you whether you believe that, 50% is enough, or if you believe that, 2/3 of the districts is required.
I would say that if half the council is displeased and the mayor goes along with it, I think that's a pretty good reason for firing someone.
Point taken, sir.
Thank you.
No, I'm just in favor of just a simple majority. And, it's been working all of these years the way it is. Why change something that's working? That's my only comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Very good. Initiative and referendum. Oops. Jim Turner was going to bring this one up, and I think you want to help me with this one, Harry? This is one that what we're looking at, and I'm glad Charlotte is here to help us through this process, but if y'all recall the smoking ordinance that we passed, and it was this and it was this, there was some changes. And what we're saying, and I think there's a process now, but we're trying to move it up into the charter, that in order to get all of the appropriate signatures, in order to change it, that what we want to do is ensure that it stays in effect for 6 months unless a supermajority of the council agrees to change it. So what we're trying to do is ensure that everything that is passed by the city council has enough time to be in process, to vet well, and then make a change, rather than making changes prior to that time frame.
Actually, this is more than just that part. There is some items in this section of the charter that conflict with state law, and so we've changed that to be more in line with what the state law says, and that's what the first sentence is there. So there's actually two or three items in this particular one that we're changing, and part of it, as Trinidad said, was this last one, so that we know that somebody that we have an ordinance that's passed, that it stays an ordinance unless there's a supermajority decides that there's a reason to remove that. What we don't want to have happen is pass an ordinance and then next week we take that ordinance and put it off the books and start all over again. So there are 2 or 3 items on this particular one.
Thank you.
Do I understand correctly that as things stand now, that if the voters pass an initiative by referendum, the city council can set that aside at their will whenever they wish?
I'm not qualified to answer that. Let me take Charlotte, do you have it? Let me take that question down and I will get you a response and we'll post it. I don't have a response for you.
Yeah, it seems confusing that if you're going to change something now to where it can't be done unless there's a supermajority, that would be because it can be done presently by some device. That if the citizenry votes a referendum and the city council doesn't like it, they can just say, phew, gone.
Point taken. We will get you a proper response. Anyone else on this? Yes, ma'am.
Mary Casper, I don't understand this proposal. It kind of sounds like even if the referendum was done incorrectly, you couldn't, if you found out, 2 weeks after the referendum, you're stuck with it for 6 months.
No, ma'am. What we've done in the last sentence, unless approved by a supermajority, so if the city council identified that something was inappropriate, they could go back and take a look at it with a supermajority and modify it to reflect the appropriate wording or changes.
If something's done illegally, it's done illegally.
Understood.
It shouldn't take a supermajority of anything. It should go to the city attorney who the city pays, and he says it was done illegally. And therefore, it's null and void.
We will, let me get a response back to you. I understand what you're saying, but I do believe, again, the city council, takes all of these very serious. And I'm sure that if they needed to bring in attorneys, they needed to bring anything in order to make the appropriate decision, they would. So I have no doubt that they would take the appropriate action. So once again, we've got it documented, and we will get a response back on the web and make sure that at the next town hall meeting, we have an appropriate response for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And then the last one is the police chief, whether it's an elected or an appointed. Today it is an elected office with 4-year term. The qualifications, as you're aware of, they must have lived in the city for 2 years and then be able to pass a test prior to or at least 2 years prior to the election. So in essence, the qualifications are very minimal for the police chief election. What we're proposing is that we follow the guidelines that the city currently has for all of the other directors of the city. For example, the fire chief. When you take a look at Fire Chief Dunn, and I've met various times with him, and he was telling us that it was a very arduous evaluation that they did on him, that he had qualifications that he had to meet. There was a lot of interview process. There was a lot of background checks. So for him to get the position he got, it was not a simple task. It was something that was done in a very, clear-cut manner that everyone understood. Same for the other positions. So when you take a look at it, this is the only director position that we have, the police chief. And what we're trying to do is again, we're asking you to decide because it is not our proposal, and that's something that I got to ensure that I don't lean one way or the other. What we're trying to present to you are the facts, whether, given these set of details that we're going to give you, if you believe that we should continue to have an elected position or if we should go to an appointed position. When you take it at the reasons why, we just had an election, and one of the comments that we had on the website was that, there's always going to be conflict anytime there is an election. One of the things, when we did meet with the police chief, I have met with him several times, and he understands the complications of him endorsing one way or the other. So I want to take, our current chief of police out of the equation. He's a good man doing his job, and so we are not talking about our police chief. But we believe that going forward, if the opportunity came about and we needed a police chief, we'd like to be able to go wherever we needed to. For example, one of the details that, or one of the stories that Floyd says, that if I brought to you an individual that had 17 years of experience, had all of the education, all of the criteria, had everything that it required, or he or she required to become the chief of police of San Angelo, but lived in Fort Worth or Dallas, they could not even run for office. So from that perspective, what we're trying to do is have an open mind, present to you some of the details that some of the police officers have relayed to us, some of the things that they go through as far as internally whenever there's more than one individual running for police chief. So this is one of those that I know gets very emotional. It's something that we believe that each one of us has to judge the merits of one or the other, appointed versus elected. Our job is to listen to you. We've gotten, as someone stated, quite a few opinions and thoughts from the internet, but I'd like to hear from you as to what are your thoughts in elected versus appointed?
C.R. Barbian, as Pat said a while ago, the people decide.
Yes.
We elect our judge. We elect our chief of police. We elect the county sheriff. It's been that way and it's worked. There are hard feelings sometimes, but there's always hard feelings after a change of any kind. So I firmly believe we're doing the right thing as it is and should remain that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Charlotte Farmer. I'm here as a citizen. First of all, I want to make it very, very clear, I don't have a problem with our current police chief. He's a nice guy.
He is a nice guy.
He's a real nice guy. But I asked him one time years ago, how difficult is it to plan your future, to plan your household budget, to borrow money for a 30-year loan or whatever, when you know you've only got a job for 4 years? That's got to be tough, and it's got to be unfair. Most politicians out there in business or attorneys in business, and they work on the side and they have an additional income out there on the side. But a police chief is 24/7, 365 days a year, plain and simple. And it's very unfair to him or his family to base it on 4 years. And the other problem I have with an elected police chief is the way San Angelo is currently set up. Your budget is handled and approved by the city council, the finance division, and the fire chief gets his budget approved and his spending and stuff approved, but the chief of police doesn't answer to the council on their budget. We set the budget and he goes out there and spends it. But if he thinks that he needs X to do the job and the council thinks that he needs X to do the job, there's where a problem starts. And then the council has to either cover the overdraft of what's in the budget or not, and it is a very difficult decision to run a city of this size on an elected police chief's position when it comes to the budget and how to spend the money and where to spend the money.
Thank you. Further comments? Yes, sir.
The sheriff is elected and has the same problems, and it works. I think the chief of police should work for the people. I think the possibility of conflicts of interest are going to be much less with an elected official who has no single boss than a chief of police who works for a politician.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Clinton Dooley. My problem with having an appointed police chief is if you have somebody with these qualifications, then we want more money. And it's going to hit us in the pocketbooks. It's going to hit our taxes as well. And that's a big, not to say anything bad about the police chief, of course, but I'm worried about how it's going to affect us in the pocketbook.
Okay. Terry.
Terry Campbell again. I just have one basic comment. We've tried this before. This has been on our election budget several times in the past. I've only been here 10 years, and I know it's been at least 2, maybe 3 times that we voted, and it's been voted down each time. And actually, I'm in favor of an elected chief of police.
to his point, in doing the research, pretty much every time that we open up the charter, this comes up. So, it's open 12 times. I believe it's come 12 times. The difference in when it was first brought up, the margin between elected and appointed is diminishing to the point now where it's almost 50-50. So it's a good point, Terry. We just have to let again, you will decide. Yes, sir.
My name's Johnny Rodriguez. I just retired from the police department. I had 32 years and 2 months with the department. I have worked for both. This is the third department I have worked for. I've worked for both appointed and elected chiefs. And again, I will reiterate that we are the only city in Texas that does this. Everybody else seems to think that it works better having an appointment. I heard comments in some of the mayoral forums and stuff that the people get to be able to pick the most qualified person. The people are picking the most charismatic person. It has nothing to do with qualifications. The qualifications are that you have to live here and be 18 years old, and that's what you have to be qualified for. I've worked for 6 chiefs in this city. Of those 6 chiefs, at the time they were first elected, none of them would meet minimum qualifications to be appointed anywhere in the state of Texas for any other city. So no, we're not picking the most qualified. We're picking the most popular. That's my opinion. Okay. On the other hand, having worked for the city, around city management and around city councils, I would be very leery of allowing the council to be able to make a decision as to terminate a chief after they go through a vetted process, if you did turn it over to an appointed position, simply because they didn't like this guy or didn't like the way he was doing things or didn't like the way he spent the money. There has to be some sort of cushioning if it were to be brought forth and be an appointed position. Again, my personal opinion, and having worked for both, is you can say what you want, but in my opinion, we're picking the most popular person, not the most qualified. That's what
Thank you. These are great comments, and we do want to hear from you, so please don't hesitate. Yes, ma'am.
Denise Barber. I'm in favor of the appointed, just because I think it increases the caliber, the qualification of the candidates, especially with higher education, because the mandates coming down for the city, our needs are greater each election year. And we need to be looking at the qualification. Also, we've seen past elections where we've had 4 or 5 candidates. That's saying you have a divisive department. And with an appointed, you are bringing, I think you're strengthening that department, and you're eliminating any divisions. And I think that is a very important factor.
Thank you.
Still R.A. Cantrell. It seems to me that the people most interested in having an appointed chief are professional politicians and bureaucrats, but most of the people would rather keep it the way it is. I've never lived anywhere where I had more confidence in the chief of police than I do in Chief Vasquez. I would, if they go to an appointed or any other system, I don't think a man should be allowed to be chief if he hasn't served in the San Angelo Police Department for a stipulated number of years.
Thank you.
I'm Floyd Kreider again, and I'm totally unqualified to be police chief. But I have lived in the city 2 years, and I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I could probably get qualified on the TCLEOS exam within a year. Should I be police chief? I don't think so. I wouldn't vote for me for police chief. I think that we should have opportunity to get the best qualified person. I'm not a politician or a bureaucrat, but I think we should have an opportunity to get that best qualified person. That assistant chief in Fort Worth with the Masters of Public Administration, with the classes in CIA and FBI, with the 14 years experience, and with the even the popularity of his constituents, peers, and his city, should have we should have an opportunity to garner that person to run against whoever else might be in the pot. Right now we can't, but I could run.
Yes, sir.
Whether appointed or elected, can the city council not determine the qualifications for running for the office?
Yes, sir. That is one of the things that we did take a look at prior to election. Should we qualify the candidates? There was some issues with that, but that is still something that is open and could be modified if we deem that was necessary. Anyone else? I know this is, yes, sir.
Artie Elkins again. I'm totally, I don't want my rights to be taken away from me. I would say go with the elected portion the way we have for years and years. I don't know one other question would be, does the city council and the mayor get involved with the selection process when the city manager has the authority to do so? If not, I would recommend that.
Yes, they do. Charlie, you want to see when we hired city manager? When I talked to Daniel, it's an excellent process that we go through, but
It's by committee, and usually there's only one council member on a committee of 5, 6, possibly 7 people, and it's strictly done by committee, and that one council member doesn't necessarily carry any weight. But I totally agree that the council should not have any authority over, it's like our magistrate judge. He's appointed. He doesn't run for office. He is appointed. And in my beginning term of council, I really and truly did not feel like council should be in authority over the magistrate judge position in any way. That is the city manager's decision.
thank you.
And that's the way it has been.
I know when Daniel was seeking his position, it was, a very tough decision. And, when you talk to him about what it took,
City manager's a little different because he works with the council for the council who work for the people. And 3 people were selected from city council amongst the city council members to be on the committee. Those 3 people worked with the human resource director of the city and what I call a headhunter firm to find candidates and the qualifications that are preset and added to with the advice and direction of the human resource director. And those candidates came before and were weeded out and selected and down to, and it's a tough process.
I think the takeaway from this that Charlotte has highlighted for us is the fact that this is not, a backdoor kind of process. This is a very well vetted process. It's a process in which there are multiple individuals that are looking at it. She mentioned, the headhunter process, or an individual that can go out and solicit who are the best candidates. So overall, at the end of the day, I truly understand that you feel and that we feel, even amongst the individuals up here. I have never asked them which way they would vote. And I don't believe that that is something that I have the right to do or will ever do. So even up here, we may have different opinions, but we are bringing it to you, the voters, to again decide, which way you're going to go. And again, one of the things that I do want to close or talk about this is that, I also believe that, Mr. Vasquez, our police chief, is doing an excellent job. If this was an appointed position, he would finish his term, and then we would go into the process. So this is not something that, we would do immediately. He would finish his term, and then he would be, on the candidates list of, to be selected. So again, I've met with Tim on this. There's no guarantees, no promise, but I can assure you, your sentiments tonight about the job that he's doing and the professionalism and everything else remains out there. So, if anything else, we need to thank Tim for, just every day knowing that we're safe out here.
And Trinidad, I just want to, for transparency's sake, someone had already asked how do other cities do it and what are some of the best practices, and I'm the only one that brings this up, but I want to bring it up again. Some cities have commissions. They used to be called police commissions. Some cities are elected, some are appointed, but now they're called safety commissions in most places, and they would be the individuals who would make this recommendation, or in some cases actually select the police chief, the fire chief, all those positions, the municipal court judge and all that stuff that's appointed now would be done in this safety commission. So that's an option, but evidently no one in San Angelo wants to talk about that one. So I just want to mention Dove for transparency.
And similar, in closing with that, when you take a look at who's got elected and who's got appointed, I think we're the last remaining. Brownwood was out there, and they have now gone to an appointed position. We in San Angelo will make our own decisions. We don't have to adhere to anyone else's standards. It is our city, and we will make that decision as voters. With that is the last unit. What I'd like to do is open it up for any comments, suggestions, or any other points you'd like to make.
It seems like the items that are going to be considered for a charter revision have already been decided upon. Not finalized, but is there an opportunity to prevail upon you to present any other items, or is that the whole ticket?
That's why we're conducting the meeting. What we'd like to do, the takeaway for us, is first and foremost to hear your comments on those items that we discussed. Second, if you have something that you'd like for us to take a look at, consider, we want to hear about it. Or if there's someone you'd like for us to meet in private or do whatever, we, the Charter Review Committee, will meet with you. This is, nothing has been decided on, nor will be decided on until you vote in November.
Well, I think we operate on a faulty premise for governance. We allow consuming agencies to go to taxing entities and tell them how much money they want, and the taxing entities take the money to satisfy those requirements. I'd like to see something on the ballot every time the mayor is up to put tax rates and tax appraisals on the ballot so that we could reverse the flow and make the situation such that the people tell the taxing authority how much money they're going to get, and they in turn tell the consuming agencies how much is theirs.
Okay. We've captured, all of your words, of course, on tape, and then it's all being recorded. But just to verify that, what we'll do is we'll reach out to you, we'll be in contact, and I want to make sure we get the full context of what you're delivering. I know that was just a couple of minutes up there for you, so we want to make sure we fully understand, but we'll get back to you.
Let me make a comment to the last gentleman that spoke. As a charter review committee, all we looked at was a city charter. What you're talking about is a city ordinance that's passed by the city council every year, that they put the tax rate out there. What you may want to have to do is take a look at this. If you want it to be on a ballot, is do a referendum, because from the review committee, our charge was to look at the charter itself, and that was all we were asked to do. So if you think this is something that the citizens need to vote on, then I would say that maybe you need to go through the referendum situation. And I believe that percentage is 10% of the voters that voted in the last election. I think that's what the charter actually says. So if that's an opportunity for you, you to do that. But from the charter perspective, that was not our charge.
But I'll get your name, and we'll work with you.
Also on the website, they have a copy of, I believe, the charter, and it's going to be section 47, initiative, referendum, and recall. And Ms. Farmer, Councilwoman Farmer, has a copy of that she could share with you if you wanted to look at that. It's open to 47. I set it aside for you on how to do a referendum and things of that nature. And it's also a good idea to go on the website because they have a lot of information posted there that can generate some more ideas and thoughts.
Before I close, any comments? Candy, Floyd? Larry, Joe? Well, again, I want to, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, in closing, what I'd like to say is hopefully one of the takeaways is that we did not challenge. Our job is not to challenge any comments. Our job is to take notes, to listen to you, and to make this as transparent to everyone so that everyone has all of the data they need to make an informed decision. Again, thank you for your time. I know we're all busy, and hopefully it's raining when we leave and we all get wet. So thank y'all.